capital formation as that of Venice in 1600. And of course, what we've learned the last week is that this is not the case. One of the ethical consequences of complacent solidarity is that those who are affected by the system, who are not in this small network, cease to register as live presences to the people within it. I've noticed this in interviews with high tech and people in high finance, that when they talk about people who are not in this network, they talk about the public, or even worse, the market. The market not being a person, but a condition. It's been very hard for the people that I've interviewed, even during the boom years, to imagine that there could be anything destructive about this small, intense group's activity. It was always the ideology saying the market will take care of it, the market will rebalance it, and so on. There is a kind of failure of understanding that one's consequences have effects on others, and that those consequences are also not in your control. And I would say, if I had to give this phrase its sharpest quality, it's the sense that these people in this small group, and as I say, let's not make it 750, let's make it 2,000, felt that they could actually do anybody else any harm. That is the strong, for the last 15 years of studying these people, I would say that's the strongest impression I had. They are ethically complacent in the sense that they don't think about the consequences of what they've done. And if you read the financial press this week, you will see that even the collapse of this economic system has not spurred them out of that particular form of ethical complacency. That is, the system needs to be fixed rather than I destroyed the life of 1 million people. You haven't heard anybody say that. I'm sorry. I ruined your old age. I'm waiting for Henry Paulson to say, I am complicit in the thing that has caused people pain. Maybe you've heard it. I haven't. So the point I'm making to you about this phenomenon is that complacency comes in many forms, and we have been living in a highly complacent era among people who have the power to do other people harm. These are people who I would say are incapable of ethical solitude, that is, standing back from the reference group in which they live, to look at their actions and reckon those apart from the network of associations that they have with their colleagues and their friends. If I had to, I don't want to make a long speech about this, but one of the characteristics that I found in studying this financial elite was that they are people who, in fact, although they're very individualized, do not spend much time by themselves. And they certainly are not people who are ethically reflective in that way that Goethe has talked about. So to me, to come back to our long discussions about this, I think this is a class that needs to be taken apart. It's not simply that they need to be regulated. You know, I'm an unregenerate socialist. You, I think, have become more wise with years. But I have remained an unregenerate socialist. What I've described to you in these 20 minutes are something that's simply a little flick of the whip accompanied by a very large check. And it is $700 billion, quite a substantial sum. You could buy wine for, for eternity with this. You will not change their behavior simply by putting a cap on their salaries. You will not change their behavior by having them fill out government forms. The problem is deeper than that. The problem is that it is a class that has been, to use rather strong language, corrupted. It's become complacent. It's incapable of those moments of solitary self-reflection, which leads somebody to say, I've really hurt a lot of other people. And it's for this reason that, speaking to Alfred as the unregenerate socialist that I am, I think the issue is not simply regulating them, but taking apart this entire financial architecture so that we don't get a small group of financial leaders and that we have something else in its place. Thank you very much.
It's one of the great hallmarks of the Institute for Human Sciences, both in Vienna and here in Boston, to put before the collectivity of citizens and intellectuals challenging, thoughtful, deep, and reflective remarks. And I thank you both for having done just that in the spirit of this institute. I've not, of course, had the opportunity to hear the remarks before they were made. And in a moment, I'm simply going to I'm going to get out of the way and invite the two distinguished colleagues to have a conversation with each other. But I would like to say aloud some of what I think I have heard about solidarity and isolation, and ask them as they talk to each other, perhaps to reflect on this as well. I heard solidarity used in the following ways. First, solidarity with respect to the establishment of meaningful citizenship. This was Chancellor Gusenbauer's theme in discussing the recent quarter century or so of social policy and the welfare state. Is it possible today, in the early 21st century, to construct solidarities with respect to the establishment of meaningful citizenship? And by that I mean threshold levels of capabilities which make the actual existence of formal citizenship meaningful. A second sense in which solidarity has been spoken of just now by Professor Sennett has been a sense of solidarity in a sense of the term as meaning the sharing of a community of fate. That is to say, we are solidaristic with each other when we share a community of fate. And his thesis was that a very modestly sized group with uncommon power has not thought of themselves as responsible for, and thus sharing fully in, the fate of the wider society or societies globally. Underneath both of these conceptions seem to me to be two more senses of the word solidarity. What might be called a shared commitment to moral values or ethical views, including the worth of the human person. And finally, also, and perhaps distinctive not to every place on the globe, some kind of sense of shared commitment to liberty. That is to say, to the opportunity to make choices freely and broadly equally in a context of citizenship. If these four senses of solidarity have meaning, then the word isolation might well mean the absence, the extreme absence of each of the above. In the absence of the means to achieve meaningful citizenship, those people, perhaps even formally citizens, are isolated. In the absence of being part of a broader community of fate and having the capacity to affect their own fates, individuals in that sense are isolated. in the absence of sharing in an ethical community, individuals are isolated. And of course, if individuals are placed outside the zone of liberty, they are not only profoundly isolated, but perhaps even put in positions of personal danger. And finally, I'd like to ask my dear colleagues to reflect on two more questions. Is more solidarity always better? Or does more depend on what kind? And what kinds of solidarity would they each like to see more of under current conditions? And last, would they accept the following claim I wish to make, that the test of solidarity in each of these dimensions, and the test of solidarity collectively, when we put these dimensions together, the test should be the following, perhaps twofold test. First, does solidarity that we have enhance or detract from our capacities as societies and as polities to deal with moments of crisis, with moments of inflection, with moments of challenge, with moments of change? And second, do we possess solidarity, or is it a test of solidarity, that solidarity itself can become a value in dealing with modern plurality, modern diversity, modern heterogeneity in ethical views, in religious practices, in rituals, in ways of life, in race relations, in ethnicity, in class structures? And if solidarity can't meet the test of crisis and can't meet the test of diversity, then what is solidarity and what is it worth? We'll proceed from here.
Nice to have small questions, you know.
To these two people, one must ask serious questions. All right. Yeah. Alfred.
Well, I think starting with your tests, for sure, solidarity has to meet the test of crisis. If we understand crisis as a situation where one or several elements of our community living or societal living are in danger or questioned. If solidarity would meet the test of the plurality, of the modern plurality of our societies, I don't think that one can take that as a given standard. This, of course, would be an aim, a target. But I think that in most of the societies that I studied, we are not able to do so. So we know that, for instance, the Scandinavian countries have been quite homogenic with a low degree of immigration. So their solidarity never was questioned from that side. While, for instance, Central European welfare states, like Germany or Austria, with a huge number of immigrants, and of course with not the ethnical homogeneity of the Scandinavian countries, they were already questioned by that. And this is only one element, and you mentioned several ones that determine the plurality of lifestyles, etc., etc. So I think that